I got to meet Doctor Rock Positano, who, in my opinion, is the #1 foot and ankle doctor in America. He's the director of the DiMaggio Foot, Ankle, and Heel Center at the Hospital for Special Surgery. He's also an incredible author. He has a book, Dinner with DiMaggio, about his relationship with Joe DiMaggio. He has a new book called Street Smart that looks amazing. And he's just an unbelievable guy. Maggie, you are going to love him so much. And we're lucky to have him on right now because the second Patrick Mahomes got hurt, I said, we got to talk to Rock, see what's going on. Dr. Positano, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Pearl?
I'm good.
That's a very nice introduction.
You're like a folk hero around here,
Yeah.
Dr. Positano. Like you have your presence on this show precedes you, but we're so glad we could have you on to talk about Patrick Mahomes' injury.
Well, you know what? It's an important part of the sports medicine world. And, you know, I had told Pearl on other occasions, I said, you know, what people don't realize is that there is really no such thing as a simple ankle sprain. You know, people tend to trivialize just how important an injury this is in terms of knowing how to handle it correctly. And, of course, in his case, you know, he's got a high ankle injury, which means it's a lot more involved because it deals with bones, ligaments, but particularly there's a ligament that connects the two bones in the bottom part of the ankle, the tibia and the fibula. So it's really kind of interesting to see how this is going to play out when Mahomes is actually on the field. You know, and I was speaking earlier with my partner, CJ Positano, who also happens to be my son at HSS, and we were talking about this. He says, you know, Dad, if they push Mahomes out of the pocket, it's going to be a very interesting game because one of the problems they have is that he's not going to have that type of mobility, but particularly to run side to side and also to run front and back. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bengals play him and what they're going to try to do to him defensively and strategically. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see what happens.
Dr. Positano, it's a right high ankle sprain, which is the plant foot for Patrick Mahomes. Is he going to be able to really get like full, you know, put his full weight on that plant foot to really get the, you know, what he needs from the lower half of his body to be able to, you know, throw the ball down the field 30, 40, 50 yards?
Well, look, there's no question about that. Maggie, he is going to be slightly impaired. There's no question about that. I mean, he probably will not have that usual zip that he has. We used to call it the Joe Namath zip, where, you know, when they would let that ball fly, it would be like a rocket. And I think that's going to be greatly affected. I think if he stays with the short game, he goes to Kelsey, stays short passes, etc. I think that probably is the best strategic way to mechanically stabilize what may be going on with him. And also, you know, he's very well known for his acrobatic passes. So you may see more of the acrobatic passes, which doesn't require sometimes a lot of these maneuvers. So the answer to that question, Maggie, is that there's no question that he will have some effect, not necessarily in a positive way, on how he's able to get that ball down the field.
We're talking to Dr. Rock Positano, director of the Joe DiMaggio Foot, Ankle, and Heel Center at the Hospital for Special Surgery. All right, take us a step back here. When he injures himself over the weekend, what kind of things can the training staff do to get him right in a week?
Well, you know, Pearl, that's a great question. I think the most important thing is they want to stabilize the injury. And that usually means bringing swelling and inflammation down, helping to remobilize some of the ligaments, or in this case, that syndesmosis, which is the ligament that attaches the two bones, to pretty much stabilize that area. Ice it down, keep swelling down. You know, try to not overextend what he's been doing in terms of, you know, his performance and his practice on the field. So I think the stability is the most important thing. They probably would brace him as well, put him in either a Malia train or something called an air cast, or a tie-up ankle brace just to keep the area stable. But remember, this injury, Pearl, is really more about torque. You know, the problem with a high ankle sprain is that it's a torque injury, which means, you know, with a classic ankle sprain, it has to do with inversion and eversion. This has to do with actual torque, which means when a person is moving, that tibia and fibula are trying to stabilize. And when you have an injury of this nature, it will affect his ability to probably, you know, get that type of torque that he needs to be able to throw the ball fast. Or as Maggie had said, you know, what about throwing the ball down the field? Well, what he'll probably have to do is shorten his stance because, he has an amazing stance, particularly with his plant foot. And we wouldn't be surprised to see if they actually shorten his stance when he's throwing because he will probably need to have more of an efficient push-off, particularly from his left foot, okay? And I think that's an important consideration here as well. So, again, but Mahomes is such a phenomenal athlete. Maggie and Pearl, he's really amazing. And I wouldn't put anything past him. I mean, I call it the bag of tricks. I think this guy has more bag of tricks in the sports medicine world than anybody. Again, he's also a thinking quarterback, too. One of the things that you hear about professional athletes, I mean, not to bring Joe DiMaggio up, but Joe DiMaggio used to always tell me, Rock, more games are won and lost between the years, meaning it has nothing to do with necessarily physical performance. It has to do with knowing how to assess a situation. And I think that's one of the brilliant things that Mahomes, as well as Tom Brady, had, their ability to read things, their ability to be intelligent. I mean, of course, I have to include Aaron Rodgers as well. But, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see how he will be able to put all of these factors together, come out on that field, and be able to put on a very formidable performance.
Dr. Positano, last one for me about Mahomes, and, it's something that we've come to, just kind of take as just sort of, all right, any day with sports, which is putting painkillers and guys injecting themselves with painkillers. We just sort of all assume that Mahomes is going to, shoot up his ankle. Would you recommend that as a doctor? Like, are you, and do the painkillers change this at all for Mahomes? Like, maybe help him out a little bit?
Well, again, if they start shooting up steroids and things like that, that's a problem. Because, look, one of the things you don't want to do, Maggie, is to be able to impair your ability to feel when you're in a lot of pain. Okay, that's an issue. Now, the old-time situation was they would shoot you up with cortisone in between periods and things like that. So I know one of the philosophies in the sports medicine world is to try to stabilize, make the area as comfortable as possible, but also not to have that person lose their ability to sense that they're in danger. Again, Pearl and I were talking about, another issue a couple of years ago with Derek Jeter. That was a perfect example where, here's a guy that was a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal conditioning, yet, they made sure that when he was playing after his injury that they didn't make it so that he couldn't feel what was going on in his lower leg. So it's really not about playing like it used to be. In the old days, they would just want to get you to play so you can go on the field and play. To the credit of the sports medicine teams, the athletic trainers, the sports medicine doctors, okay, and of course the in this case the NFL. I mean, they really do care very much about the well-being and the future well-being of their players. So, again, this is something that is not necessarily advocated. You don't want to in any way impair the athlete's ability to feel what is going on.
All right, Rock, before we go, I want to plug your new book, Street Smart, a primer for success in the new world. Who are some of the sports people that you feature in this book about sort of your growing up experience and how to be street smart?
Well, of course, Joe D. DiMaggio was the ultimate street smart, brilliant person. I mean, Joe always felt that, always look and always use your instinct. Learn how to feel when something doesn't feel right. I mean, and Joe was an amazing, amazing judge of character, which is why he was such a brilliant ball player because, again, he had that intelligence that, that far, far transcended the field. So, then, of course, we interviewed Bob Costas, who's an amazing person. I mean, Bob is one of the most articulate, journalists I've ever met. Bob gave us some really good pearls as well, no pun intended. And, of course, Dr. Fauci, Tony Fauci came on. Tony gave us some very interesting caveats about how to basically navigate when things aren't always going well for you. As you know, Tony had to put up with a lot of things throughout his tenure as the NIH man. So I think the book is very good, though, Pearl, because what it does, it brings these present-day kids who unfortunately didn't grow up like we did. And it gives them some sense of how important it is to be able to use your instincts.
Yeah. And
to be the ability to, no pun intended, think on your feet. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the important thing about Street Smart. So it was a lot of fun to do. I did it with my brother John, and we had a blast. And, of course, we also talk about, Maggie, some of the fun things that happened to us growing up as well. everything from going to confession in church to, helping play roosters on our neighbors. So it really, in many respects, the book should be very well received. I know a lot of the CEOs who participated, Tony James, who used to be from Blackstone, they all love the concept of the book in terms of it being relevant and very important for today's youth to be able to hopefully grasp some of the concepts that we spoke about.
One last thing. So I know you see a lot of professional athletes, and the treatment you do on ankles can be painful to people. I'm one of the tougher guys you treat, right? I mean, I've only cried a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
You
He's
have to be impressed.
as tough as a New York Yankee, Andrew Perloff, I'm sure.
No, Pearl, let me tell you something about Pearl. What we love about Pearl is that he's one of the most compliant people you'll ever meet. I must say that, okay? And of course, when he told me that Tiki Barber had recommended him, and actually Tiki, to his credit, had actually reached out to me and said, look, I know this really, really great guy, and I'm concerned that they're going to operate on him when he doesn't need an operation. Would you do us a favor and see him? I said, of course I would.
Yeah.
And, of course, the nice thing about Pearl is that, he's – even though he's a Philly guy, which we don't mind totally, he really has a great perspective about sports and the love of sports. And, that's the cool thing about him. And I think Pearl appreciates more now than ever how important feet and ankles are, particularly in the sports medicine world.
I tell Maggie every day.
Every time.
Every day.
Dr. Positano's a folk hero around here.
Yeah.
Perloff's he's spreading the gospel.
Yep.
Congratulations on the book. Thank you for shedding some light here on Mahomes, because I think I'm going to change my bet now.
Yeah, well, again, I think the thing here, Maggie, the big thing is that if they could really push him out of the pocket, it's going to be a very interesting game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, because long passes are really going to be very challenging. The short game is the way to go. I think he's going to want to stay in the pocket, obviously, because he's not going to have that mobility to be able to run around the way we normally see him. And I think if he basically makes his stance a little shorter, he'll have more zip, and he'll be able to get some of that zip that he's lost because of the fact that he's lost his plant foot.
Wow.
Mahomes under passing yards, just on my DraftKings account.
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Positano.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Rock.
it.
See you soon, buddy. Thank you.
Hey, guys, thank you for your kindness, and have a wonderful weekend.
You
Appreciate
too.
it. You too. Enjoy the games.